Good morning. I'd like to welcome y'all back to our Sunday school lesson this morning. It's been a great time the last few weeks with you, and I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you're getting something from this. Be sure, if you have any questions, to comment them on the YouTube page. Leave a comment down below. We'll try to get into a discussion if we can. If you have any questions, obviously, you can also ask me at church. I'd love to talk to you on Sunday morning with that. But this is going to be a great lesson this morning, one that I am very passionate about, me and my wife. This is something we work on a lot, and we enjoy working on. We like to help others with if we can, because we think that marriage is the most important thing that God has given us on this earth. It is the closest physical example we can feel of what God has done for us through salvation. And a great marriage, if you have a church full of great marriages and faithful marriages, then you're going to have a good church. Because you're worrying about what God would have instead of having to worry about fixing things at home. So, with that being said, let's get started this morning. We're going to be in Proverbs chapter 5 today. We're going to be taking a couple sections. That's lesson number 5 for those who are following along with the book. If not, just turn to Proverbs chapter 5. We'll be talking there today. While you're getting there, I just want to start asking a question. Whenever you're building a house, what's the first thing you do? You make a design. You get a plan. You get a blueprint from either you draw it yourself or you get a engineer to draw it. And there are certain things that must be done in a certain way for that house to be built. And those blueprints will tell you what those are. And that's exactly what God has for us. He has laid out a blueprint on how not only our life should go, but in this particular case, how our sexual relationship within our marriage should go. And when we deviate from that, things happen. Bad things happen. If your builder did not engineer those blueprints correctly, or your builder, the engineer engineered them correctly, but the builder didn't build it correctly. He used 2x8s when it should have been a 2x12 spanning a floor joist. Then you're going to have a floor that falls through at some point. Or if they did not take care to use the right nails to hold up the walls, you're going to have problems down the road. There's a very specific way that God wants us to act, and wants us a very specific plan that God wants us to follow. And that's what we're going to look at today. And we're going to look at God's plan for a sexual relationship within the confines of a marriage. So let's start at verse number 3 in Proverbs chapter 11, and you can just follow along with me here. For the lips of a strange woman drop as an honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life, her ways are movable, thou canst know them. So in verse 2 here, verse 2 right before that, Solomon reminds his son to safeguard his lips, and then he contrasts that with the strange woman. And here's where we get our topic. The strange woman versus the woman you know. In this particular case, the woman you know being your wife or your spouse. We'll play this both ways. I think that could be absolutely applicable that it could go both ways, as in the woman should be watching out for the strange man. And so we're going to be contrasting what the strange woman does compared to, which it is implied that would be compared to the woman that you do know. In this particular case, again, your spouse. So what are we to be looking for in that strange woman? The lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb. They're sweet. And her mouth is smoother than oil. I've been around several couples that have had issues, that have even split, that have even had ended in divorce. And nearly, there are always exceptions to rules, but nearly every time that infidelity is the issue, it is because someone in that relationship has met someone else. And that is almost inevitably the words, they made me feel good. They made me feel wanted. They made me feel loved. And we're going to get to why they would feel that way shortly. But the first action here is that someone else is good at deceiving you into thinking they are what you need. That is the job of the devil. He is a deceiver. We have talked about in other chapters that there are many things that the evil people do. That is what they do. They can't rest until they have deceived you and brought you to their own scenario. But her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold on hell, lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life, so ways are movable, thou canst know them. You don't know their true intention. They probably, I'll say this, if someone is getting to know you, and you are a married person, they do not have good intentions. They might think they have good intentions, but it is a selfish intention. It is a selfish intention. Why would they pursue someone that they should not have unless it's what I want? So the Bible here is warning us that they may sound good. They may look good. Their voice, the words that they say are sweet and smooth. And I think that's interesting that he uses both terms, because we describe that's a sweet girl. She was just so sweet to me from a male's point of view. And from a female's point of view, man, he was smooth. He was good. He was desirable. And so, but the end of that is bitter as wormwood and sharp as any two-edged sword. Sometimes you think you know where they're going to be coming from with a two-edged sword. You can see the attack where it's coming from. But the problem is it's two-edged, so it can come back the other way and catch you off guard. And that is where the difficulty lies, is knowing where, it's keeping a vigilant eye on where the attack is coming from. And the father here to the son is warning him that the strange woman is deceitful and cunning and selfish, and they seem good, but they're going to attack from both sides. So I don't know when Solomon wrote this. It's not my specialty. But I don't know if either A, the man knows what he's talking about because he has experienced it, at this point, or B, he didn't take his own advice. But we know that Solomon's downfall was the fact that he could not stay away from the strange women in his life. And I like to think that maybe he is speaking from a little bit of experience, and he's feeling that bitterness of wormwood and trying to pass on to don't do what I did. Don't fall in the same category. So we got to move on, but just the idea of keeping an eye out for those smooth words, that sweet, it feels good. It does to have attention, to feel wanted. Everyone has that desire. And again, we're going to get to that in just a few moments. But the key is here that they are being selfish. If they truly felt that way about you, if that person who is lavishing attention on you truly felt positive things towards you, or love, or those beautiful things that they're saying to you, they wouldn't say them to you, because they know that you are with someone else, and therefore they know that they are just being selfish in their words. They don't probably actually know that they're being selfish in their words, but that is exactly what they are doing. They want what they want. They seem to have your best interest only concerned, but the only thing is, they seem only concerned about giving you joy and taking care of you and all of those things. But they just want what they want. If they really were concerned about you, they would want what was best for you. And God's plan says what is best for you is to not go to the strange woman, but to stay with the woman that you know. And again, you imply that both directions. So move on to verses 7 through 11 here. Hear me now, therefore, O ye children, and depart not from the words of my mouth. So again, I tend to think maybe Solomon is speaking from a point of view of knowing what he's talking about here. Remove thy way far from her, and come nigh the door, and come not nigh the door of her house, lest thou give thine honor unto others, and thy years unto the cruel, lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger, and thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed. Hear me now, children. Remove thy far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house. Come not nigh the door of her house. Remove yourself far from her. Here's how you avoid the temptation of falling into a strange woman, is you avoid the strange woman. Not saying that you can avoid every person in the world, and not saying every person in the world who's nice to you is trying to remove you from your spouse. It is fine to have people of the opposite sex that you are friendly with. But there should be no one of the opposite sex that you are closer to than your spouse, period. Because he is telling us here, we are to remove ourselves from those situations. Don't allow yourself the opportunity to fall for that smooth honeycomb lips, that smooth as oil words. If you're not in a position where you can fall for those things, you can't fall for those things. So you are to remove yourself from those situations. And this is just an aside here, that your best conscience is your spouse. And let me explain. Now, if you have a good relationship with your spouse, I will preface that to start this by saying that, then your spouse should be your conscience. Meaning, if my wife tells me that this woman is no good, then I should listen to her, because she isn't blinded by attraction or by desire, or even by as a dumb. We're sometimes we're just stupid and we don't understand what we are getting ourselves into. Even if at this point we may not feel that way, and a lot of men's reaction to that is, "How she's not." No, that's not the case. She's just a friend, and that may be true at this moment. But your wife is there as your conscience. That is her job. And listen to her when she's giving you a warning. Same with the husband. Now again, sometimes husbands can get jealous, but usually there is a reason for said jealousy. And they are trying to protect you, to pull you away from the door of the strange woman. So listen. Don't get argumentative saying, "You never let me have friends," or "Oh, you don't understand." Yes, they do. First off, if it's because they are the opposite sex, they do understand how they can be manipulative both ways. Men can try to manipulate a woman, and women can try to manipulate a man to get what they want, because they're selfish, because we are a fallen people. So as an aside, listen to your spouse when they tell you they are your best conscience. You can't always see where you're falling wrong. You can't always see that they can. That is why God made you one. So just remember that. So it says, "Come not nigh to the door of her house." How can we avoid that? By ever keeping our spouse on the forefront of our mind. I don't know, again, talking to people, but I would imagine it would be a whole lot harder to fall for those words when I'm thinking about my wife. I would think it would be a whole lot harder for me to say those words and be the one that tries to pull someone away if I have my wife on the forefront of my mind. That is how I can remove myself from the door. This is important stuff, and you have to work at avoiding the temptations of the devil. So verses 9 through 11, we'll summarize that real quick because I've got a lot more to get to. Lest thou give honor to others. So, falling for the strange woman, falling for the temptation that is there for sexual misconduct outside of the marriage, leads you to have no more control of yourself. You have given up your honor. You have given up your control of yourself. You have shown this person that you can be manipulated, and then strangers will be filled with thy wealth. There are physical consequences, there are financial consequences, there are emotional consequences to not removing yourself from the situation. In verse 11, "And thou mourn at the last, when thy flesh and thy body are consumed." It will pull a toll on your life. Now, you'll sit there and tell me, you know people that have strayed and been divorced and remarried and are happy, and that is absolutely true. But there was pain and there was suffering. God can forgive. There is forgiveness. But there is also pain and suffering. David sinned outside of his marriage with Bathsheba. Well, he took another man's wife. He was the strange man. He was the one with the honeycomb words. And he sinned with Bathsheba. And God forgave him because he begged God to forgive him. Lots of the Psalms are about that. There were still consequences. His family fell apart. His sons died. His son attacked him. He had consequences for his actions. And I'm not saying you can't be happy and you can't be forgiven and your life is over. But there are consequences, and they are painful consequences sometimes. Families and children suffer, and spouses suffer, and trust suffers. Verses 15 through 18, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. This is where I actually wanted to get to. We're 20 minutes in, but this is where I actually want to talk about today. Drink waters out of thine own cistern, and running waters out of thine own well, lest thy fountains be dispersed abroad, and rivers of water in the streets. Let them be only thine own, and not thy strangers with thee. Let the fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. That first little phrase, drink waters out of thine own cistern. Now, I have heard countless messages on the home and how you should, there are keys to taking care of your home. But the reason, again, nearly every time that someone is tempted to leave the confines of the marriage for sex is they are not being fulfilled by their spouse. They're looking for attention, for love, for companionship, for sexual fulfillment, for whatever the case may be. They're looking for it because they need it, because that was God's plan to get it in the marriage, but it doesn't always happen. And so God summarizes that in one phrase: drink waters out of thine own cistern. So I always thought that a cistern was like a well that you went to and you dipped out of. It is a well. It is a body of water that you dip out of or pump out of for is a water storage. But the thing is with a cistern, cisterns aren't usually naturally fed. They have to be filled. They're a storage tank. And so unlike a fountain, they have to, because he compares it here, drink waters out of thine own cistern and running waters out of thine own well. He's saying we have a well, but we also have a cistern here. And you're to drink waters out of your own cistern. But here's the thing. You have to fill that cistern before you can drink waters out of it. You want your sexual fulfillment in your marriage, which you should, then you must put in before you can take out. Meaning, if you want attention from your wife, you have to put attention onto your wife. You want the sexual fulfillment from your marriage that God has designed us to have, then you have to put in the time and the effort and the lavish love and attention on your wife. They are not normally, they desire the attention as much as they desire the contact. And you have to put in to that cistern before you can draw out of that cistern. You can't expect waters from a cistern if you haven't put into it. You can't expect attention and love and sexual fulfillment and companionship and talking from your wife or from your husband if you have not laid the foundation and filled that cistern first with gifts and attention and praise and kind words and just spending time with each other, getting to know each other. And how can you get to know each other if you don't spend time with each other? Same thing with draw back to God's word, that the only way you can know what God actually wants for you is to read his word and spend time with him. Well, your spouse is the exact same way. You cannot know what their desires are, whether it's in life or sexually, unless you have spent time with them, talked to them, ask them, what can I do to fulfill your desires today? And they may just say, I just want to talk. They may say, I just want to lay here together. You have to fill the cistern before you can drink from it. And so I could do a whole lesson on that, ways to do that, practical application of that. I would love to do that sometime. I love this topic. But the idea is that you have to put in the effort, you have to put in the time, you have to fill that cistern before you can drink from it. You can't expect your spouse to not find fulfillment elsewhere if you are not giving that fulfillment, because God has designed us to have that inside their marriage, to get our sexual desires filled, to have our emotional desires filled. He has designed us to do that in marriage. But if you aren't fulfilling those things for your spouse, they will tend to look elsewhere. Now, they may be a good person, and not a good person. We're all not good people. But they may not sin. They may not stray. But you are opening the door and allowing that to happen if you are not filling that cistern so that you can drink from it later. So that would be the takeaway I would get from, but verse 18 says, let thy fountain be blessed, and rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Fill it up. God will bless it. God will bless it. Your marriage, if you put the time and you put the effort into it, God will bless it. And then you get to rejoice that you have this wife all the way through your life, and y'all are one, and y'all are committed, and God's going to bless it. I promise. God says it. God says it not just here, but in many, many places, that it will be a blessing to you. And I promise, you may say, well, my wife or my spouse, my husband, they don't show me any attention. You're right. They may not. Pray for them. Talk to them. Tell them, hey, honey, I'm sorry, but you aren't showing me the attention that I want and desire. I don't want to find it anywhere else. I want to find it in you. Here's how you can help me. And if they don't, then again, you just got to pray for them. Talk to people. Talk to pastor. Talk to someone. This is important. Your marriage is the most important thing in your life outside of the church. Period. Because if you don't have a good marriage, you won't have a good family home. And if you don't have a good family home, our church suffers. Your relationship with God suffers. And so I hope I didn't ramble on too much today. Please heed the words of the Father to the Son. Remove yourself from the sweet lips and the sweet words and the smooth words of a strange woman. Cleave yourself unto the wife of thy youth. Fill that cistern so that you can drink from it later. And hope that God blesses your marriage. Pray for your marriage. Invest in your marriage in any way that you can. And again, if you have questions, comments, please leave them down below. If not, hope you have a great Sunday morning service this morning. And can't wait till we're able to do this again in person. But in the meantime, continue to come back on Sunday morning. We'll continue to have our virtual lessons. And I pray that God blesses you.